couple years ago when my daughter got married, I remember, I had my mother-in-law there, and I made the comment, and I was going to introduce her. I said, there's one person here that I want to introduce, that let me tell you, if it wasn't for her, none of us would be here tonight. And that was my mother-in-law, and that was a fact. Well, let me tell you, without this next group that I'm about to introduce to you, none of us would be here tonight. And that's the Schut family. Let's take a look at this.
Supportive, and this was one very, very dramatic example.
Dr. John got it when he was 29. In the late 40s, he was doing the research on genetics. He was just theorizing that if you could get a linkage with some known factor, that this linkage would then predict who could get ataxia. That was forward thinking. Someone told me about Dr. Orr, and that he would be an ideal person to do the genetic studies to actually locate the gene. And that was in 1986. And by 1993, they discovered the gene for SCA1, which is the disease in our family, spinocerebellar ataxia type 1, which is found in the Schut family, the family in Michigan, and the family down in southern United States, where Dr. Zogby was studying.
At the time we were trying to clone the SCA1 gene, it was like searching for one individual in the state of Texas. By using the information from the two families, we kept narrowing it down from the whole state to a few cities, down to one city, the biggest highway in that city, and we decided we're going to march that highway, which is, imagine that's the chromosome. But you march from one end and I'll march from one end, and we'll make sure we both cover the middle part. And we found it right in the middle of that highway.
In order to map the SCA1 gene, we had to use recombinations. And one of the recombinations that we used to map the region was from your family, and the other one was in Larry Schut's family. And there was this one individual that we thought was a recombinant. And you always wanted to double check it because it's so important.
It was the person, I think, that allowed them to know that they were right there, parked on the gene. It was from the Michigan family. Dr. Random, who was his postdoctoral fellow at the time, said to me, I would like to have you recollect that blood just to make sure we have the right sample. And he had died. So we talked over and says, well, there's anything that would give any DNA. It was a hairbrush.
First of all, this was an exquisite silver hairbrush, and I thought, I was so nervous we were going to lose it. We found one hairs in the hairbrush with the bulb still there, so we could get DNA and verify that this person really was a recombinant and we hadn't made a mistake. Very humbling to have the family make that material available to us.
It's important to know that the disease has really had a profound impact on the Schut family. There were 65 people that eventually developed ataxia and died of it in my kindred. 65 people is not a small number when you think of one family. Probably if I've accomplished anything, it's been to really counsel the family members and encourage them to think about their reproductive options. When I started working in 1971, there were 59 at risk for the disease. Now there's only one person at risk for the disease. We're down to one. And so I think it's important to know that families can find out what's in their family in about 60% of the cases now. We fulfilled Dr. John Schut's dream that finding the gene would give us a deep understanding as to what's causing the ataxia, and that we could find a cure. Henry Nino invites me to a clinic. I find out about the Michigan family. When I examined the family with him, I said, boy, this looks like my family. It looks like the same ataxia. And we found that it had the same DNA type. I don't take credit for things like that because, you know, it's serendipity. But without Harry Orr, I mean, people just popped into my life at times. You just wouldn't believe it. I just stand on the shoulders of other people.
It's been a real family effort, so to speak. It's the way science is supposed to be done.
Absolutely.
It was a labor of love.
Ladies and gentlemen, without their efforts 60 years ago, none of us would be here tonight and moving this needle forward on finding a treatment and then a cure for ataxia. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the Schut family. Larry, Marilyn, the twins, Dwight, come on up, everyone. If I may, let me read this. It says, "We are the strength behind the National Ataxia Foundation Award 2017. This honor is bestowed upon the Schut family in recognition of furthering the NAF's mission. You truly are the strength behind the National Ataxia Foundation 60th Annual Ataxia Conference, March 11, 2017. Dr. Schut, come on.
Thank you, Joel. Yes, it's true, we do stand on the shoulders of so many people. We have heroes, sports heroes, musicians that are heroes, but the heroes are the people who live with ataxia, don't they? And I feel love. I've felt love in my family, from my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and from all of you. It goes back to 1755, when the first person that we can figure out had ataxia, Jacob van den Berg in the Netherlands, and his son and his grandson, Jan van den Berg, who they said had tuberculosis of the spine. Well, he didn't have tuberculosis of the spine. Two of his daughters emigrated to the United States, settled in northwest Iowa. One had 2 children, both developed ataxia. One had 9 children, 7 of whom developed ataxia. So by the time I started working on it, there were 59 arrhythmias. It was said on the tape. Then in the 1915, 2 of my great uncles, Will and Henry Schut. Henry was a pastor, and the family at the 2 at the Mayo Clinic were said to have familial ataxia. I read the letter, and what it said that to live a good life, eat well, and do good work. We really don't have much more yet, but we're getting closer. Then my father, my next hero, in the 30s, said to my Uncle John, you're a pretty smart guy. I think you ought to go to medical school and work on this disease. And my father convinced somebody at the University of Minnesota to evaluate a cousin, Will Schut, Bert Schut, I mean. And he was evaluated by Dr. Gray, and Dr. Gray did the autopsy after he died, and had the first case of olivopontocerebellar degeneration, which is the long term for OPCA. It resulted in our family then having some notoriety about and understanding what was going on pathologically. And then my Uncle John went to medical school and did his residency, and he spent 2 years at the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology and produced a film which was of 6 people with ataxia in the family. He kind of separated them into different types of ataxia. And the person who accompanied him was Julie Schut, who was on our board of directors. Unfortunately is not here tonight. I wish she could be here. She did as much for the foundation as anybody I can think of. I remember as a 12-year-old sitting on the steps of our stairway up to our bedrooms in the dark, listening to my Uncle John and my father Henry sitting around the kitchen table and saying, you know, we need to do something to get the word out. And that was before John really knew he had the disease with certainty. Well, after about 5 years to 7 years, something like that, we got together with 3 other men and formed the National Genetics Foundation in 1957. What? No, I said National Genetics, I'm sorry. National Ataxia Foundation. Because National Genetics Foundation is something else for us. Well, then it was supported by little canisters that put in grocery stores and pharmacies and hardware stores around Wright County and some places Hanover County and around Anoka, all in east central Minnesota. And people dropped in their nickels and dimes, and people went door to door and got a quarter or a dollar. And so they raised about $3,000 the first year. And it went along like that. My Uncle John had to retire from his work as a neurologist and ended up in a hospital, but he had a research laboratory at Glenwood Hills Hospital in northwest Minneapolis, Golden Valley. He had mice which had ataxia, and he thought maybe working with them would give him an answer. Well, he got worse, steadily worse, and he said to me one day, he said, I don't want to die of this disease. Do everything you can to keep me alive. That was probably the worst thing that he could have asked me to do, because I did everything I could to keep him alive. By the time he died, 22 years after the disease started, he could not talk, he could not see, he could not understand who was around him. It was a tragic death. He died just of failure of his organs and failure of his lungs. But also his sister Elsie died before that in the 53, and she died choking. So we've had many challenges and yet many rewards. There have been so many people that have participated in working with this. We've had volunteers who have helped us with free ataxia clinics in Golden Valley. We've had people who have gone with me on research trips. And I want to acknowledge some of that. My sister Linda, right here, she went to several of the trips with Laura. Raise your hand up there. Stand up. Yeah, you know, actually, the person who probably did the real bench work for 3 different diseases was SCA1, SCA5, and SCA8. And has there been any other person that really has found a gene for 3 different SCAs? I don't think so. And so when we had these free ataxia clinics, people came from all around the country. And there was a press conference held in New York City where Time Magazine, Associated Press, Ladies' Home Journal, and several others attended. And at the press conference, we told them about our family history. After the publications came out, we had hundreds and hundreds of letters saying, hey, we've got the same disease. We didn't know there were so many that had ataxia. At that time, we sort of divided up into Marie's ataxia and Friedreich's ataxia. And then we found out that it was separated into SCA1, SCA2, and onto 43. So it's been a long journey, but a fruitful journey. I've gained a notoriety I didn't deserve. I just happened to be there in the right place in the right time. And also, my brother Wayne, in 1973 to 74, he was the first executive director of the National Ataxia Foundation. And so he understands a little bit what that's about. And that's when there was no money and we had to help him out. Family members helped to pay for his very meager salary as an executive director. And my sister Lois, she worked with the JCs in Rockford, and also the JCs in Minnesota. And she's really contributed a lot in that respect, and she's been to our clinics too. And my sister Marilyn, she is now on the board of directors, and I'd like to have her say a couple words.
Thank you, Larry. Of all the things that I could say, is there's been no greater privilege to see what has happened as we look across this audience tonight, to be able to do even the smallest things that can make a difference, and take those small steps with each one of you. And I really say that with a sense of believing that we are taking those steps with you, because we can come here and the people we loved so much in those early days, all those relatives and wonderful people that meant so much to us, we can now see that you are much like they were, but now we know more is happening, and that is what's giving all of us and our family a thrill. One other acknowledgement I would like to make, and that is that each of us in our family, and we as siblings, have not only had support from each other as we were growing up, but we also married people that have given full support to all that we have been part of. And so we brought my husband John up here, and Larry's wife Loretta, the other siblings are not here. But we just want to say thank you to all of them, because without them, we probably wouldn't have been able to do what we can do. Thank you so much for being part of this incredible experience.
And there is still one other sibling, Darlene. She could not be here. She had inadvertently scheduled a trip to Egypt with her husband Ed at the same time as this thing. She has rued that decision greatly, and she's here in spirit, I can guarantee you. She's also done a great deal with us in our ataxia work. And so I think we'll bid adieu to you and turn it back over to Joe.
I just wanted to say that as a younger brother and family, we are very proud of you, Larry.
There you go. Thank you all so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the Schut family, thank you all for what you've been doing for 60 years. We would not be here without you.